Welcome to this conversation on Business Redefined. As always, your weekly most comprehensive look at the world of business, finance, and economics. Tonight, we want to talk about electronic tax invoice management systems, eTims. Finance Act 2023 had substantive amendments as far as this is concerned. One, Section 23 of the Tax Procedures Act was amended to ensure that all businesses, underline the word all businesses, shall issue electronically generated invoices for their processes. The second substantive amendment, and I think more consequential, was when it came to Section 16 of the Income Tax Act around deductibility of expenses. Starting January 1st, 2024, the only expenses which would be deemed deductible by the Revenue Authority when you're filing your income tax returns would be those which are backed by electronically generated invoices. Now, that might sound a bit complex. We have an esteemed panel with me here to break it down. The deadline for onboarding lapsed on the 31st of March. We want to make sense of that. I'm privileged to have on set the Chief Manager for eTims itself at the Kenya Revenue Authority, Hakamba Wangwe. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
And I have Job Bonjoy, the Head of Policy and Advocacy at one of the biggest umbrella body for businesses in this country, KM. Job, karibu sana.
Thank you so much.
And finally, the Chairperson of the Public Finance Committee from the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, that's Robert Wareru. Maybe needs no introduction here. Robert, you're welcome on set.
Thank you very much, Julian.
Ladies and gentlemen, karibuni sana. This conversation is so much anticipated, so let's get right into it. Hakamba, let me start with you. Coming from the authority, March 31st was a sunset date. What was the number? What were the numbers of uptake looking like as at the 31st of March?
So what we're projecting to have onboarded by 31st March was a total population of 915,000 taxpayers who are registered in our system. In our system, they're registered and they're active in filing of returns. What we managed to onboard was 202,291. So a percentage of roughly 22% of the total population of targeted taxpayers. So that's what we closed the period with.
Wonderful. And how do you feel about that performance?
I would like to say progressive because when we were getting to January 2024, our outlook wasn't looking so good given the issues, the challenges that various stakeholders were raising. So it's progressive in a manner that with the rollout of the additional solutions, the simplified solutions, we managed to get more taxpayers onboarded. We managed to do the stakeholder engagement as, as envisioned, create awareness. Not what we expected to do better, but with automated solutions, I think what happens is to continue with the onboarding despite the timelines.
I see. Allow me to seek a little color on the 202,000 businesses. I'm curious as to what proportion of this 202,000 were originally VAT registered but not on eTims, and how many would you say are purely new taxpayers who you didn't have on your radar earlier?
So out of this population, we had, first of all, we had 76,000 who had earlier onboarded, 76,905 VAT registered taxpayers. So in addition to this, the ones who onboarded on eTims, we have 63,800 taxpayers, additional taxpayers who have onboarded. Those who are not registered for VAT make up a population of 61,586. And out of this, about 38,000 are on the simplified solution. So you can see the bigger percentage of the non-VAT taxpayers are not in the main eTims, but they are on the USSD and the eCitizen platform.
I see. Very good context setting there coming from Hakamba, who's the Chief Manager for eTims. And in case you're wondering what the simplified solutions are, that is USSD code as well as eTims Lite, which was rolled out by KRA earlier this month. Let me come to you, Robert. Give us some historical sense around how we got to this point, right from ETR to this point of eTims.
That's a good question, Julian. So when you talk about ETR, which is the electronic tax register, this is a solution that was implemented in 2005. And the whole idea then was KRA needed to have visibility of all the total population of VAT registered persons. So it actually came in through the then Income Value Added Tax Act, Cap 476. And what it required is that if you're a VAT registered person, you are to implement the electronic tax register and pass all your invoices through that, so that Revenue Authority would then come and download the data. Those days it was downloading the data. It was not transmission to Revenue Authority. And so you would also then generate what is called a Z receipt or a Z report, which shows all the transactions that you have passed through as a VAT registered person. So it was actually designed to give Revenue Authority visibility for VAT registered persons. And that, as you correctly said, was implemented in 2005. In 2011, we had a bit of an issue where the regulations, the law changed, though I think inadvertently, but then it was reinstated the following year. And then what happened is it continued being implemented all the way up to 2020. In fact, actually, if you look at the VAT regulations 2020, it sort of laid the framework for the implementation, for the proper implementation of the ETR. And then that's what now has morphed into the eTims now for non-VAT registered persons.
I see. Good breakdown there. Listening to Hakamba and giving us the numbers in terms of the uptick, what's your sense in terms of the performance?
So there's two ways to look at this, Julian. If we were to look at the 22% that Revenue Authority achieved, just looking at that, one would say that it's not really a good outcome, given that they were targeting about 900,000 new registered persons. But 200,000 registered persons, I think that's it's a good outcome, particularly if you consider the time frame. Remember, the Finance Act was passed in June, on 26th of June 2023, and then this particular provision came into force on 1st September, which basically gave Hakamba and her team here 3 months to implement the solutions and then go out to get people on board. And then now you've got about 6 months together with the extension to March. So if you think about September 2023 to March 2024, I think 200,000, 30,000 or so people every month. It's not a bad outcome, but certainly I think there's more to be done in terms of expanding that tax base, really.
Okay. And just for the sake of clarity, when Robert talks about 1st September 2023, if you read the Finance Act, the provisions for amendment of Section 23 of the Tax Procedures Act for issuance of electronically generated invoices kicked in effective September 1st. Effective January 1st was when it comes to the invoices which would be admissible for tax deductible purposes. Let me come to now the private sector itself. Job.
Yes.
What are your members telling you about eTims? And how do you feel about this performance?
I like the statistics that Hakamba has given us, showing that we have about 700,000 players in the business who are not yet registered with the eTims. And I think our members are speaking on their behalf. Because from where we sit, we have what is called the backward integration and forward integration, the market linkages. From the source market to destination market, where we sell our final goods. Source market is where we get the raw materials and intermediate products. You find that these 700,000 KRA that was targeting are the one whom are going to be affected adversely, because our members will not be able to transact with them going forward. Reason, our members, if they transact with them, they'll not be able to do the tax deduction. Or even when they're doing like now the corporation tax calculations and whatnot, it's likely to be depressed because they could not be able to account for all the expenses. And that's the reason why we are calling for an extension so that we can have more sensitization, period. It has been an endemic issue on tax payment in the country, and it cannot be resolved in a span of 15 months. Because the eTims came to fore in April last year when we had the Finance Bill 2023. So we have been discussing about it. But non-payment of taxation in this country has been long. And if I would paint it statistically, we have about 22 million registered voters. That means we have 22 million people who are above the age of 18. The tax payment base is about 5.5 million people. So that means we have about 17 million Kenyans who are unable to pay taxes because of one reason and the other. Subsequently, we cannot onboard them in a span of 14 months. Not 14 months, let's say a span of 7 months. And that's why we are saying give us an extra 4 months up to July 31st, 2024.
You even have a date in mind.
Yes, I have a date in mind. So that private sector and the government can work together to sensitize the business community on the pro and cons of not registering with the eTims.
But Job, to be fair to the state, finance bill dropped in April last year. We have had conversation about electronic invoices ever since. And you're following the motions. This thing could potentially be in the final Finance Act. And not just that. Job, you and I have sat in many conversations where every year we talk about we need to widen the tax base. How exactly do you imagine this tax base will be widened?
I got to some, Julians. We are in support of eTims. It is the period of sensitization and training the business community. For instance, there are things that are beyond our control. The internet connectivity in the country starts at about 32%. If you get into eTims, because of the three platforms, all the three platforms, you have to use internet. Tell me of someone who is in Turkana, another person is in Elwak, and they don't have internet connectivity, but they will be punished by paying twice the tax they're supposed to pay, only because of externalities, things that are beyond their control. Should I be coming from Elwak to Nairobi so that I get internet connectivity, and then I go back to Elwak to conduct business? No, it cannot not work like that. That's what I'm saying. Give us more time, because there are things that are within our control and others that are beyond our control. Internet connectivity, feature phones availability, and smartphone availability. Feature phones availability, the penetration is about 62%. Smartphone availability is about 60%. These other 40%, they cannot be able to unload the eTims. Reason? They don't have the smartphones and the feature phones. So that's what I'm saying. Can we give people more time so that we don't punish them because of things that are beyond their control? Again, there's sensitization on self-dependence, self-reliability as a country.
Yeah.
Let's pay what is due. I think that's a culture change in the country.
Okay, I want to come to Robert before I come to Hakamba. But before that, just to clear this, when he talks about a punishment of 2x, he's actually referring to the provision of Section 86 of the Tax Procedures Act, which is the penalty for not issuing an electronically generated invoice, which is 2 times the tax due. Robert, the Association of Manufacturers is asking for an extension to July 31st, which takes us to the next financial year. Do you see a challenge with that?
No, actually, I don't see a challenge with that. And the reason is, first of all, Revenue Authority has already anyway extended the compliance deadline. Remember?
To March 31st.
To March 31st.
Yeah.
So nothing stops Hakamba here, and I hope that that's what we come out of here today with an extension. Because like Job says, we really need this extension for us to bring in more people. But you know, Julians, if you think about the ETR, the question that you asked about ETR, we implemented it in 2005. We had regulations coming in 2020. And even in that 2020, the compliance deadline was extended 2 times. First of all, with a year, and then two other times with a month.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? The implementation, it's a good solution, in my view. The implementation time frame that Kenya Revenue Authority was given could not work. Absolutely. And if the numbers even tell it, 22%. It can't work. So I think policymakers, and I'm very happy that Job is here, because when we meet the parliamentarians, please extend this thing, because the law says 1st of September you have to implement. Then Revenue Authority has given us up to 31st of March. Now we want a statutory extension so that it's very clear. And when you're extending that one, Julian, can you please tell us what's going to happen when we're filing our 2023 returns? Because the law is also telling us we can't take a deduction.
Yes. Let me come to Hakamba. You've raised another issue which will be further important further down the road. That is what happens because of the tax deductibility provided by the law. But Hakamba, listening to the Association of Manufacturers, what's your take?
Yes, I actually understand what Job is trying to say, but I think speaking from the authorities' experience, the last 2 days, last week, Wednesday and Thursday, the experience in our offices is that everyone was there trying to onboard. To come today, it's past 31st, there's no one. So what we experience, even with the rollout of teams, what happens is that whenever you extend, we don't have taxpayers coming during that period of time. If we say 4 months, then the first 3 months, there's no one. And then the last 2 days or the last 2 weeks of that period is when now there's a lot of activity and also complaints that probably KRA is not serving taxpayers fast enough. So this time we'd like to take an approach, and this is the approach that we are taking, that should there be consideration of a bit more time, it needs to be demonstrated with what are we doing during that period of time, and not a blanket extension where everyone will go back maybe for this period up to July 31st. There's no one who is coming to our offices, and then towards the end of July is when everyone is coming and still asking for more extension because probably we lost time during this period of time. And many taxpayers have actually come forward because when they come forward, basically I think the population you've been talking about, what we've experienced again, the farmers are far flung. They are making a major contribution, especially for your sector and the retail outlets. And basically in this country, it's a major impact when it comes to the farming population. They also have the challenges that we are talking about, lack of reach for when it comes to internet connectivity. Maybe they don't have the phones. Yeah. But that's the reason why we need to have this conversation with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, for example, the exporters, the various stakeholders that are mostly affected by this implementation, so that we see how we are going to address the needs of the taxpayers in the lower end. The extension is not the solution. The solution is finding a solution for the taxpayers who we can't reach due to one reason or the other. But there is another population of our taxpayers who are not affected by these factors. We've given them the simplified solutions. We have the USSD. How long does it take for someone to onboard on the USSD solution, but they will not? How much does it take for someone to go on the eCitizen platform? Right now we are working on the mobile app that will be on the Google Play Store. Those who can onboard, we need them to onboard, and then we deal with the exemptions or the outliers so that we see what solutions we can have, because the most important thing for us is not to have the e-invoicing solution on your phone or on your tablet so that you generate an invoice. The most important thing is to have visibility of this transaction right to the grassroots. Yeah. So in whichever form, we'll take that information.
So for the avoidance of doubt, Hakamba, one, you're telling us there is no extension.
There is no extension.
Two, you're telling us this matter will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis.
Correct.
I have a question for you, Hakamba. So if you follow the news, doctors want exemption, farmers are saying something, manufacturers have a view. Does it speak to the fact that in the build-up to this, we didn't have stakeholder engagement, or what exactly happened?
Yes, what happened is that we did, as you mentioned, that in the run-up to the Finance Bill 2023, the stakeholder engagement was there. When the bill was being tabled, when it was to the journey towards it becoming a Finance Act, even previously before, the stakeholder engagements have been there. The problem is the sectors that we've targeted this time, as opposed to what we've been doing with VAT registered taxpayers, they're new sectors. They've never been affected by electronic invoicing. Yeah. So when it comes to now this new concept, adoption, we did expect that adoption, we'd have challenges with adoption, but then also what has come out very clearly is that the sectors are diverse. You've seen the doctors are talking about one issue, we'll have the farmers talking about a different issue. And that's why we've decided to diversify our approach so that we see which sectors are being affected by which problem. We address that problem and keep moving forward as we continue with the implementation, instead of giving a blanket exemption where we are engaging no one, but then we are not making progress.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the elephant in the room, I'd imagine, if someone is watching this, would be, in this period where you're doing a case-by-case engagement, does the penalty still apply?
So for those who come, that's what I'm saying, for those who come forward, you know, we know what we are doing with them. I'm going to give an example, the coffee sector. Right now, they have an integrated platform, which where they're doing their coffee auction on, for example. So when we decide to integrate with this platform, we also know the timelines that we have set for them to be fully on board and for us to have the transaction right back from January, by the way. So we are taking a similar approach with the tea sector, for example, and for some other farming sectors, we know they are not so automated. We are going to have a different approach for them. So the timelines will depend on what we are actually doing with each of these stakeholders.
Before we take a break, Job, you have no extension. It has been made abundantly clear.
That's what I hear. And what I'm worried about is that when the 3 or 4 months lapses, and then it's time now for, to do tax declarations, the penalties are going to apply. Those who are doing their final books of accounts, and they'll not be able to do their deductions, again, is a loss on them. During this period, we are talking of farmers who will not provide the inputs to the manufacturers. You're talking of livestock keepers. You're talking of common use of facilities. You're talking of aggregation centers. Many people, 700,000 that we have had here. These people are going to lose business during this time. And these are, the small business operators, micros, and so the smalls. And when you look at the effect that is going to have on the business and their household and their livelihood, it's going to be big because they don't have access to market. They don't have access to the manufacturers. And many other sectors that are experiencing what we're experiencing. Yeah. So an extension would really help to save the situation for the country. This is a situation that even the government is likely to lose small revenues that is collecting from these players.
I see.
From payee to tax, to turnover tax, and many others. It's likely to lose.
So the trade-off for you is not worthwhile?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That point by Joe Monjoy takes us to a very quick break. We're coming back right after the break with further detail on this conversation, including the question of how are we actually rolling out eTims without regulations in place. Stay tuned.
NCBA is committed to promoting financial inclusion and empowerment of women in Kenya. One of the key challenges that women-owned businesses face is, lack of credit history, a collateral shortfall. So what NCBA has done is we've come up with programs to facilitate access to facilities for some of these women-owned businesses by providing a risk share arrangement that enables the customer to borrow with less collateral requirements. At NCBA, as part of our sustainability agenda, we have committed to ensure that 30% of our vendors are women and youth. The whole purpose of this commitment is really to spur women's businesses and enable them to participate in the procurement process within the bank. We are tracking this very closely as we are committed to ensuring we continuously uplift women.
Kenya, twende mbele. NCBA, go for it.
The truth is not governed. The truth governs our beliefs, our faith, the trust we give, the democracy we seek. When held back, it always breaks free. Seek the truth. Set yourself free. Subscribe to Read online at epaper.nation.africa. Daily Nation, the truth unfiltered.
Are you curious about that dazzling look? How do you define beauty? And how to dress elegant, glitz, and glamorous? The Glam Show is here to answer all those questions and show you what's popping and what's the latest in the beauty and lifestyle world, because you need it. Look your best and fall in love with Into the Glam every single Saturday only on NTV.
The Glam, in association with Nivea Black and White Deodorant.
Nivea Black and White Deodorant protects me and my favorite outfits. That's why I feel confident and free. Nivea's 5 times anti-action formula and 48-hour protection is also available for men.
And welcome back to Business Redefined. We are discussing the emotive topic of the electronic tax invoice management system, popularly known as eTims, and the questions on Twitter are many. Let me just start very quickly with Gideon Kimutai Choge asking a question to Hakamba. What's the USSD code for onboarding?
*222#. And then you just follow through the prompts.
prompts.
It doesn't take very long.
All right. There's a gentleman here, Gerard, asking, please ask your panelists, what happens when we are filing and we have to account for the receipts which are not eTims generated between January and March 2024 because of the extension? And you can imagine where this gentleman is coming from, because Section 16 of the Income Tax Act was amended to provide that only eTims generated invoices will be deemed admissible for tax deduction. So the law is very clear, as we like to say, but here we are, we got an extension from the Revenue Authority. Will those invoices be deemed admissible? Maybe I should be looking at Hakamba, but let me start with your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a fantastic question, Julian, because if you think about it, the law is telling me I can't claim if I don't have an eTims invoice. Revenue Authority has given us this concession to say up to 31st March, you can trade with Julians who is not eTims compliant. I know you're eTims compliant, but you can trade with Julians for this period until 31st of March. If you go to the UK, there's a concept they call extra statutory concession. That's exactly what Revenue Authority has done. So they are going outside of the statute to give you a concession, and you cannot be punished as a taxpayer. So I fully expect that despite the statutory provision, that if this was to be disputed, it would be found in favor of the taxpayer, and you should be able to take a deduction. And now the problem is more pronounced for companies like, for example, Safaricom, which is a March 31 year end.
Yeah.
So they have already closed their books last week.
Yes.
They have, of course, incurred expenses between January and March. So will they take a deduction of that? I expect that they should, because Revenue Authority has given that extension. So my view is that they should not punish anybody, Julians. But just before I give it back to you, we were talking about the timeline for implementing this thing, and now this eTims. If you look at other countries that have done it, they have done it over an extended period of time. So I really don't understand what's the issue about extending this compliance timeline.
That's the voice of ISPAC. Now, let me come to Job, and there's a question for you. And this gentleman is asking, Timothy is asking, can KAM tell us how they arrived at July 31st being a suitable duration? Do they have a model on how many they'll have been able to net into eTims in this period? Fair question.
One thing is that we have a pathway whereby we have done an analysis of the complaints that we're receiving from our members. So it's based on the perception of our members, whereby those who are in the agriculture sector, those who are in leather and leather products, those who are doing milling, a number of companies are those that have come on board, and they have given a fair view of the members that are affected from manufacturing perspective. And that's why we were feeling that out of probably 5,000 farmers that we're targeting that normally feed into our system, we can work collaboratively. And that's why I started by saying we work collaboratively with Kenya Revenue Authority, so that we can see in the next 4 months whether we can be able to onboard all of them. And how we're looking at it is safeguarding an ecosystem, not only for the manufacturing interest, but ensuring that the common good of the country is being protected. So they have a pathway that we have established with a strategy.
Okay. Yeah. Hakaba, still on that point of netting in taxpayers into eTims, I sat and I wondered to myself, if we really targeted those, if I could call it the bottom of the economic pyramid, the ones targeted via eTims Lite and USSD, why were we rolling out those solutions so late, 1 month into the deadline, 1 month to the deadline rather?
Okay, first of all, I think what we are taking in is the feedback from the taxpayers. And with any automated solution, you see we started with Teams, and then over time we started moving towards eTims, and then over time we started talking about the simplified solutions. And right now, I think for the model Job is talking about, I think I like the word he's using, work collaboratively with KRA, because we know the manufacturing sector have something to offer that will be able to support these entities that probably we are pointing at that do not have capacity to do that. Why we are progressively thinking of the solutions, and they seem like they are coming a bit late, but they are being informed by the feedback on the ground. And anytime there's feedback, we are going to think of a solution that will help us still meet our objective, at the same time addressing the challenges that are being raised. So that's why we've been talking about. I think we have this conversation, and then we're able to determine what solution best fits this sector and how long will it take to have this solution in place. As they mentioned about up to July, 4 months, most likely we are going to tell them it's too long, can we shorten those timelines? But then we'll work closely to make sure that those timelines are met, and we'll be meeting the needs of a sector, maybe behind them 1 million taxpayers behind them who will be taken care of by these solutions. So the solutions are not coming late. It's because they are addressing the needs. So they'll keep evolving, and we'll still keep having more solutions depending on who we are dealing with.
Okay. Yeah. Allow me to stay with you, Hakamba. So late last year, we saw draft regulations for electronic tax invoicing. We gave our feedback. Treasury, I sent my feedback as well. And we saw what we thought were final regulations, but they were never gazetted. So how are we rolling out eTims without regulations in place?
We are trying. We are trying, but we are working on having these regulations published once again. I think the biggest concern that was raised at the time was the threshold, the exemption by threshold. And if you realize, when you looked at the regulations, both the regulations and the law actually, the law when it came to exclusions excluded transactions. And then when it came to now the exclusions that you saw in the regulations, there were transactions, and then there was a threshold which was not a transaction. So we were trying to address that, given our biggest concern was not that we wanted to deny taxpayers of the exemption, but because once we have such a provision, then it makes it a big challenge in the absence of data supporting who is below that threshold. Then we would not even have a target population that you're targeting for this implementation. So we've had to work on that. Unfortunately, it has taken a bit long to have the regulations back. The biggest challenge has been to address such questions now, whether there's a threshold exemption, and then you have to say it by word of mouth that we don't have a threshold exemption. The provision 3A, when you look at the exclusions, air ticketing, imports, and so forth, and then it says similar payments. The definition of what similar payments means really should have come in the regulations, which now we have to explain what that means. And then when we talk about the commissioner being given leeway to exempt persons from the provisions of Section 23A, then we've not said what does someone need to do to be exempted, which should have come in the regulations. So I think we'd be looking forward to the regulations being published, because some of these questions the taxpayers are having, even the discussions about the solutions that we are having, have actually been addressed in the regulations, why we are having those solutions, so that when you're talking about exempting a person, then what have we done in place of that, so that we still get the data and exempt that person.
So we look forward to this Friday's Gazette notice?
Hopefully, I hope I've been heard. I hope it comes out.
Robert, is there a case for threshold consideration in the eTims regulations? And just for the sake of those of us who are watching, the 5 million question, annual turnover. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you think about the objective of eTims, the objective of eTims was to broaden that tax base. And how do you broaden this tax base? It's by bringing in as many taxpayers as possible. Now, the first thing that when I listened to Hakamba, she said that we had the data of these guys, we just needed to bring them on board. So bearing that in mind, so do you really even need a threshold? Because you can then bring anybody. However, in terms of implementation, certainly a threshold is required, and I wonder what that threshold will be, because if you look at the budget policy statement, it's talking about perhaps revising the VAT threshold to 8 million. So should we have a threshold of 5 million, or should we have a threshold of 8 million? I don't know. But for me, I think it would have been better to have a phased approach where you say, okay, anybody who is below 1 million, first of all, we're not interested in you. Let's first of all deal with anybody between 2 million or 1.1 million 1 shilling and 5 million.
Annual turnover.
Annual turnover. Because anyway, these guys are filing their turnover tax. So it's not that they're not known.
So I was going to ask you, so then what is the point of turnover tax?
This is the point. You see, if KRA knows that I'm paying turnover tax of between 1 million and in fact, that threshold of turnover tax is precisely the reason why we should have had this threshold for eTims, because KRA is not interested in anybody who is below 1 million. So why are you going harassing guys who are 1 million? And that's why Job is saying, let these guys continue in business, let them not lay off people, and you continue collecting your little transactional taxes there. In the meantime, let's perfect this thing, and once we've perfected it, then we go after everybody.
Job, you vouched for an extension. Would you vouch for a threshold as come?
eTims is not a legal framework. just a framework that helps in implementation of different thresholds that we have. So eTims cannot conflict like now the VAT Act. If the VAT Act has put a threshold, minimum threshold of 5 million, we can go for it for now. But it's a question of, in future, if we want to expand the tax base, and there are those who are below 5 million who are paying the VAT, how probably then can be brought on board. But at the moment, let's observe what is in the legislation, because eTims is not a new tax, it's just a tax compliance system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me ask this question. Maybe, Robert, you can help us answer this. This question has come from two viewers. A mobile data internet provider is not issuing eTims invoices for any prepaid services, and we need to claim this. How do we go about this?
You know, and that is the problem of rolling out this thing. Because if you think about some of these service providers, they are probably, you are issuing, every month you're issuing probably, I don't know, 6-7 million invoices, and you need to issue them within a very short time frame. Now, do the solutions that are there support issuance of that number of invoices? I think Hakamba, the solution that currently has, is issuing about 21 invoices a minute. So if you think about somebody who is issuing millions of invoices, it becomes a problem. And I'm not surprised to hear that that question is arising. And so for me, I'd be saying, I am willing to pay to issue the invoice, but I am unable because of the infrastructure that is provided. And so you cannot punish my customer, and you can also not penalize me.
So Hakamba, as you respond to that question which was asked here, there's also, I'm inundated with questions around how I started this show. I began by saying Section 23A actually captures that all businesses should issue invoices through eTims. And the question I'm being asked is, what about Mama Mboga? What about the maize cob vendor?
So I think starting from what you mentioned, that we should adopt a phased approach, I think you need to look at the legal provision that we have for effective 1st January 2024. What did we say? We said that you need to support your expenditure with an eTims invoice. Right there, we are actually looking at the businesses that are facing off with the supply chain. So when you're looking at revenue impact, when you're talking about Mama Mboga, and you know it's an easy topic to veer off and forget the bigger picture, is that it's not where we would be targeting first. The manufacturers, for example, are actually getting supplies from some of these entities. So if this Mama Mboga, for example, we are talking about the person who has kuma, tomato, but still is supplying to the retail outlets, and is also supplying to the manufacturing entities maybe for production, then that person would be interested in at this point in time. So over time, as you said, over time, of course, we would go down to the smallest of our taxpayers. Right now, it is not the target. And that's why we've really been focusing on that legal provision for 1st January, because really it would be talking about B2B transactions as we speak. And it doesn't matter how big or how small the taxpayer is, as long as he's facing off with another business entity, then we'd need to know who this person is, because whatever it is that they're supplying to this business entity adds up when it comes to the expenditure and when it comes to their income tax declaration. So we would be interested in knowing that.
Yes.
The other question would be...
I think you've addressed on the Mama Mboga, and
okay.
and also just to buttress what Hakamba is saying, we need, don't you think, Robert and Job, there's a case for a necessity of an infrastructure which allows us to verify invoices? Because what has been claimed, and we've had very outrageous stories out here around, you walk into a petrol station and you ask, give me all your receipts for the day, and you go and claim. You know, don't you think there's a case for it? Because that's part of the idea behind eTims.
Yeah, there's a case for that, because the eTims, it's trying to avoid tax losses from different angles. One is misdeclaration of expenses. Sometime I can even go to, like what you're saying, petrol station or to my small shop, and I transfer all that cost to my business. So that's one. The other one is on trying to reduce on your profit margins as much as possible, or the bottom line, so that the dues that you pay, like now the corporation tax, becomes small. So it's something good to run at the moment. And I think there is what I can call the trust deficiency. That's why the government has taken now the role of centralizing, the tax invoicing electronically, so that they have visibility of what you have done and what the buyer and the seller are doing, rather than you can be left in the periphery and you're coming to do self-declaration because there's or there's voluntary compliance. Yeah. If we can move to voluntary compliance, business can operate without the eTims. We have seen this working in other jurisdictions. But because there's that trust deficiency, we don't want to expand the tax base. That's the reason why the government has decided to centralize this. But as I said, we have some issues to address. Like now, I've had a very good point that per minute that the system can only generate 21 invoices. And imagine how many transactions that we're making in this country. So a lot need to be addressed before we get there.
Actually,
it's the one that I forgot, and I really need to address it.
Address it, please.
And we are not going to say which mobile service provider it is. But as we talked about solutions, they too have their own solution that is actually catering for bulk invoicing. And we have major utility companies. I'm sure when you look at your electricity bill, especially for postpaid, they're already on eTims, and you can imagine eTims, and you can imagine the number of transactions that they have to generate. So something different has to be done to make sure that these are accommodated. Yes, one mobile service provider has not come on board yet, but watch out for April. They should be coming on board this month. And for those who are filing their VAT returns, despite the complaints, we did not have a complaint on that particular mobile service provider because, again, we found a way to get this data in the system so that everyone can claim input tax. So yes, we have our eye on the outliers, and there are not many, but we make sure that they have a solution that actually works for them. Bottom line, we get these transactions in the system.
No, and I agree with you. There's certainly a case for visibility. And in fact, this solution was designed for visibility across the world, wherever you go, Togo, Rwanda, DRC. It was designed for visibility. Now, what Revenue Authority perhaps, and I hope that we're going to get to this conversation, because filing the February 2024 returns was nightmarish. Yeah? Because you see, these invoices have got a QR code. When I scan it, I should be able to see that Robert has issued an invoice to Job. But
auto-populate.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know whether it's a user issue or it's a system issue. I don't know.
But considering how pervasive it was clearly not a user issue.
Well, some people say it's a user issue, but I don't know. All I know is that it was a nightmare. And in fact, I happened to be somewhere at the same time with Hakamba that particular day, and I kept on asking her, "Are you guys relaxing the system so that people can file their returns?" That system was relaxed at 4 p.m.
Yes.
So it was nightmarish. And so I really hope that the infrastructure can be put in place so that that cross-checking, actually that's the whole essence of eTims. It's about cross-validation of data, so that you can have truthful declarations like Job is saying, and everybody is paying their fair share of tax. After that, everybody is happy.
I see. And just to give context to what Robert is talking about, so the 20th of March, I believe, was the sunset date for filing VAT returns, and there was chaos in this town because we were told ideally this should be auto-populated, but KRA had to relax and to allow manual filing to give some breather there for taxpayers. Maybe Hakamba, you can make a comment on that.
Okay. So what happened on March 20th is it's not something that was not with us. It was with us. When you're talking about, once again, this word I'm going to keep repeating, visibility. That's what came out. Because when it came to taxpayers, for example, I'm going to put it in 3 phases. I'm not going to absolve ourselves from taking any responsibility of system issues, because there are system issues. But then we had issues also on the part of the taxpayer for not, you see, like, remember what we were talking about from June. And we've kept issuing public notices. And you remember, any public notice that has come out, we've kept saying we'd like to remind taxpayers to continue transmitting their invoices through the system, and also make sure that they support their input with electronic, valid electronic tax invoices. The other thing that was happening that was recurring so much was the issue of credit notes, whether or not they were generated within that period of time, 6 months or or outside that time. Now, come the filing season, what was really happening is that people were not finding their transactions. Both sales and even sales, taxpayers would say that not all my sales were there. And we were with you again, someone who said I did not transmit everything, so I was able to save that. But you see, everyone is supposed to transmit all their transactions into the system. So when you go and find that the sales representation is less than what you had, it is because you did not transmit the rest of them.
Yes.
When it comes to the issue of purchases, if you find that you don't have some of your transactions, probably you did not give your buyer PIN, and a big percentage of taxpayers, that's what they did. But then there's also another percentage of taxpayers, it was not their fault. That's why I was saying we had to roll back. But the person who made a sale to them, when it came to configuration of their systems, they did not make provision for where buyer PIN should be.
Yeah.
So as much as they were capturing probably maybe somewhere in the invoice, not in the fiscal data. When it transmitted, what happens? He has an invoice that has a buyer PIN, but then in our system we don't have it. So when it comes to auto-population, we don't see it.
Yeah.
So on our side, the issue of the system issues, for example, like credit notes, what was happening is that some credit notes were appearing as invoices. So the ETR suppliers, there was a bit of responsibility that they had to take, especially on the issue of buyer PIN. So when we realized that these are not issues that do not exist, they exist even right now, except it gave us an opportunity to correct that. That's why we had to roll back. We are taking this time to make the corrections. We've had the conversation among ourselves. We've had the conversation with the ETR suppliers. Once again, on national TV, I'm asking taxpayers, please transmit your invoices. Make sure your buyer PIN is captured when you are being issued a tax invoice. Then we come back. We'll come back and switch it on again, and we see if we are finally getting it, and make sure that we are able to make our declarations as accurate as possible.
That's it. Joy, do you want to come in on this issue of the 20th, the experience that you might have had as manufacturers?
Yes. In fact, it was a nightmare on 20th, and we got to a point that we had to reach out to
the Revenue Authority
and the Revenue Authority and tell them that we will not be able to file by the end of the day.
Yeah.
Allow us, relax the system so that we can do manual filing, and then we can continue the conversation. And we are grateful that this was allowed. And as majority of manufacturers and manufacturers were able to do their filing. So it was a big nightmare, and it's just a question of ensuring that we have tightened the processes. If it is a system, ensuring that the system and the operation is efficient. If you're talking about the filing, you don't have to wait until 20th sometime. We can do it earlier. So is that collaboration again between the government and the private sector to ensure that the system is working? But still, I go back to my point. Let's extend. So
this guy came here on one mission.
Let's extend, because we have not resolved these issues, and manufacturers, all players in the economy are going to suffer because of a few malfunctioning of the system.
I see. Interesting. I'm seeing lots of questions around. Hakamba is talking about a credit note. What is it? So in case I supply you with something, and then I decide to give you a discount or a reduction in price, then I issue with a credit note indicating that I should be able to reimburse you at some point. We are supposed to take a break in about 2 or so minutes, but Robert, there's a question here which I think you can help me respond to. Mudhoni Ngugi is asking, kindly ask if it is mandatory for a person filing TOT to be on eTims. We have discussed this thing.
Because there's no threshold, everybody, including even your landlord, should be issuing you with an eTims invoice.
For my rent?
Yes, for your rent. Because, and though I take the point that Hakamba has made that that's a B2C transaction, so the Revenue Authority is not really interested in that. They're first of all focusing on business to business, B2B. So to answer Mudhoni's question, yes, you must, because it's everybody. Actually, Section 23A is very clear. Everybody in business, you have to issue an eTims invoice. So that's the answer.
On that point of B2B, Hakamba, you can help me respond to this. Someone was asking, okay, so now that we know we have about 700,000 businesses which are not yet on eTims, and Hakamba is telling us KRA is largely focusing on B2B, how exactly do we know if we fall in that category, and what proportion of the 700K would she say are in that category?
Okay,
People are playing safe.
I think you've seen the problem that we have, even as you're talking about an extension, is taxpayers actually looking at, so which gap can I take advantage of? Yeah. So I'm still coming back to the issue of revenue impact. He's right. that the law provides for anyone with business income. And I was trying to shift our focus from what about the person who sells maize, Nini Mahindi Choma. I was trying to shift our focus from there. Otherwise, when you're talking about revenue impact, we would actually be talking about people with rental income. Even if they're B2C transactions, when we can perceive that this is an area that we need to focus on, then we will focus on that, as much as we would be escalating it towards where we are going to, because our main intention is to collect revenue. So we'll be focusing on where we actually are going to have impact on that. We'll be focusing on where we are going to have more tax-based expansion. Someone is talking about the 700,000. Remember, the 915,000, my figure is way below what should be. What we took the figure from is for the taxpayers who are active in the system. But out there, when you look at the statistics available with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, we should be looking at a taxpayer population with business income of about 7 million.
I see.
Yeah.
We take a break, unfortunately, at that point. We shall be back now with the tail end of this conversation. I know we still have a lot to cover, but we shall see how far it takes us. So stay tuned.
Ukikuja home late from work, unataka
Glovo.
Ukitaka kushop bila queue,
Just Glovo.
unatafuta last minute gift,
Order Glovo.
pizza, wigs, flowers.
Glovo.
Order anything you want and dance away. Come on, naitaka, there's no better way. Ding dong Glovo, ding ding dong Glovo.
Download the app. Order anything. Track it minute by minute and we'll deliver.
How do you keep your toilets clean?
I use normal detergent and bleach for washing.
The detergent and bleach cleanless can leave behind yellowness, rust, and germs. Harpic's 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergents and bleach, and kills 99.9% illness-causing germs in your toilet, including the COVID-19 virus.
You do your best out there. Let us do our best in here with the disinfecting power of Jake. Because Jake cleans and kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs and COVID-19 in your home. Jake, your family's guardian against germs and COVID-19.
I happened to tell him I'm pregnant. My friend faked the papers and he believed I'm pregnant. I had to come up with something to get more of his money. I've done worse things more than lying to you that I'm pregnant. I've slept with other men.
I tried looking out for you, bro. Hey, you see now? How's the heartburn? Look now, it's burning.
Do not hold back in any situation. Eno gets to work on the 6 symptoms of heartburn fast.
You do know you said all of that out loud, right?
If symptoms persist, seek medical advice.
Nivea Black and White Deodorant protects me and my favorite outfits. That's why I feel confident and free. With 5 times anti-formula, I stay fresh and protected for 48 hours, and my clothes stay stain-free. World's #1 anti-stain deodorant from Nivea. Try it. Nivea's 5 times anti-action formula and 48-hour protection is also available for men.
Ataenda kucheza nje na hii baridi yote. Why did you let him go? Si atagonjeka.
Sasa asipofanya tizi, how will he win more trophies? To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways. And Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol sure.
Mortein Dew, with its trusted formulation, it provides protection in seconds. So spread the Mortein Dew message of how we, you and I, can fight to end malaria. Mortein Dew, Kenya's #1 choice.
Quran Verse of the Day in association with KFC. Quran Verse of the Day in association with KFC.
Do you want to join us?
I'd love to.
Buy our Feast for All and get a free Streetwise one to share because sharing is caring. KFC, it's finger licking good.
This is NTV.
Tonight, the UDA will conduct the ensuing county and national elections of the party by December 2024.
William Ruto's litmus test in party elections. Will UDA crack the ever-elusive political parties elections code? A Chapter 6 violation is also ready hunting the party elections body. Plus,
they're all immediate family members, and we've lost 6 plus 1 family friend, so 7.
Easter of accidents and fatalities. An Akuru family mourns 6 relatives who died in a pile-up crash in Salama.
We are not going to allow any illegal firearm to remain in the wrong hands. That will not be. No, it can't happen. It can't happen.
Police IG Japheth Kome wants bandits for the upteenth time. Will he slay the deadly dragon's head this time around? And
to effectively dry it, lower the moisture content, and store it in a cool place, especially the method by the pastoral communities who dug holes in the ground.
Ready for the planting season. Traditional seed banks have no fix. The heartbeat tonight.
A mosquito can enter from anywhere and prevent you from having a peaceful good night's rest. This is why I recommend the Motindum Liquid Electronic Device. The Motindum powerful formula reaches every corner, giving your loved ones a peaceful sleep. Together, we can fight to end malaria. Motindum, Kenya's #1 choice.
Nimejaribu mafuta na sabuni nyingi, hazikusaidia kurelieve eczema, dryness, or my baby's sensitive skin. Tangu nigundue the new Nice and Lovely Baby Naturals wash. Ni soothing during bath time na haiwashi macho. Ngozi imebadilika kabisa. Thanks to Nice and Lovely Baby Naturals Jelly and Cream. Jionee mwenyewe. The power of 3-in-1 Jelly and Cream moisturizes, protects, and repairs. Chagua Nice and Lovely Baby Naturals, approved by pediatricians and dermatologists.
To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol sure.
Welcome to the tail end of this conversation on Business Redefined, where we are discussing the subject of eTims. And I can see a lot of feedback here, but one recurrent question, and let me just bring in Robert back again. Many Kenyans are asking, if I'm in the turnover tax bracket, and for the sake of those who might not be aware, the turnover tax applies if your annual turnover ranges between 1 million and 25 million shillings annually. It used to be 50 million, then Finance Act 2023 scaled it down to 25 million. Should they be raising invoices?
Julians, they should be raising invoice. It's actually a statutory requirement. Any person who is in business, so forget about even the turnover thresholds, any person who is in business is required by law to raise invoices. And to your point earlier on, Section 86 of the Tax Procedures Act, if you don't raise that invoice, then the commissioner is actually supposed to write to you and ask you to give a reason why you've not done that. And if the reason is not satisfactory, then the penalty is 2 times the tax that is involved. So all businesses, irrespective of your threshold. However, I know the question probably is coming from the question of the point of, if I'm below the 1 million, then surely do I need to register for this eTims? And that's the reason why we are saying, let's have some sort of threshold. It may not be the 5 million, but let's have some sort of threshold so that we have a phased approach to ensure that we get as many people as possible into the tax bracket.
All right, Job.
Yeah, today we are talking about the VAT, That's the reason why we have the 5 million, threshold.
Yeah.
The reason why we are talking about this. But the fact that we have other threshold that are provided, like now the turnover tax that Robert is talking about, 1 million to 25 million. When you hit the 1 million, is when the tax deductibility should be done through e-invoicing. If you're below that, then we need to have a discussion whether other manual invoices should be allowed.
So you're for thresholds, yeah?
Yes, I'm for the thresholds. Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you're still building on your point.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, all right. Hakamba, we've had a very long conversation around eTims, the kinks we still need to wire out, and you agree there are issues we need to streamline. How do we take this forward? You have told us categorically there is no extension. How do we move forward with those businesses who are still out there and they need to be here?
Okay, so the government is not trying to be a hardliner. What we're encouraging taxpayers is to comply. So there are some who definitely there are solutions that are available for them. Please comply, because as you can hear Job here, he's raising very, very valid points concerning them not being able to support the expenditure. And what we don't want to do is to rob people of businesses. You can continue doing your business, but you can also comply. So the solutions that are available is for all taxpayers to be able to choose which solution works for them, and they comply. And then the other bit that we'll be going forward with, even with our low number of onboarded taxpayers, is the facilitative approach. And that's why we are having this collaboration with various sectors, determining which solutions that would work for them and what facilitation we can give on our end. The other bit that probably we'll be looking forward to as we move forward also is the introduction now of the enforcement measures, because now we'd be looking forward to you to complying, but then in the event that is absent, then we'd like to see what further enforcement measures we'd have to put in so that we're able to bring in the numbers that we were looking forward to. And lastly, what we are working on is some incentives, public participation initiatives that you'll be able to see in the coming few months, where we are now bringing in the general public to help us in enhancement of compliance by them cultivating a receipt asking culture. So that now once we build this, then we will be trickling it down to the lowest of our taxpayers. And for purposes of business, they would want to comply. And the general public will be giving us feedback on the experience out there, whether or not they were served with an eTims receipt. And once they report, then we'll be able to see what measures to put in for non-compliant taxpayers, at the same time give incentives to those who report.
Thank you for that point of incentives. Let me just give you context in what is happening in Rwanda. On the 29th of February, the equivalent of KRA in Rwanda issued a notice indicating a consumer who requests and is issued with an electronic invoice is eligible to a reward to the tune of 10% of the VAT amount shown in the issued invoice. So you can get an idea of what could be coming from the KRA side. So Robert, we have had the figure of potentially targeting 7 million, which sounds quite large. What would this mean from a tax yield optic in your own assessment?
So Julians, if we can get like Job said, we've got probably 5-6 million registered taxpayers who are currently, Hakamba and her team are collecting roughly 2.3 trillion shillings. If that number moves from 5-6 million to 13 million, then absolutely no reason why we should not be getting to the 4 trillion. You know, initially when I had government talking about 4 trillion by 2025, I thought they were, probably they were not too serious about that number. But now, if we can get an additional 7 million taxpayers, I don't see a reason why, Julians, we should not be getting to probably financing 95-96% of our budget without even borrowing. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why, for me as an individual, I am completely for the eTims, because it's about democratizing tax in this country. Let everybody pay their taxes, and let us ensure that the taxes that are collected are now then properly used. So your question, what is the revenue yield? Probably we are likely to see that moving to 3 trillion in short order, and probably moving our tax to GDP ratio from 15% or thereabouts to what it was in the 70s. You know, in Kenya in the 70s, we were in the mid-20s,
Yes.
tax to GDP ratio. So that to me would be a fantastic outcome from this exercise.
All right. Before I come to Job, let me give a question to Hakamba or whoever can take it. Asking for a friend here at D. Namatsi is asking, come clean on the taxation system used in schools from eTims supplies and purchases. Essentially asking schools which are receiving supplies should also be in eTims. I presume they should.
Yes, you know, sometimes we look at public schools, especially, we would like to think that they are being funded by the government.
Yeah.
But then the same public schools rent out their buses, for example, or their grounds for events, or their swimming pool for those, especially the ones in Nairobi. And they do have a component of business income. So yes, they need to onboard.
All right.
But private school, definitely,
Okay.
they need to onboard.
Job, someone is asking here, we've heard about the request for an extension from KAM, but what are they doing to sensitize their members about onboarding?
One thing that we are doing is that every manufacturer has a base of farmers that supply to them. We organize a sensitization forum with KRA, but besides that, as a private association, we have gone ahead and we are sensitizing those who supply us with the input on how and various platforms that they can use so that they're registered in the eTims. Yet some of them have done it, others have not done it, and now the case that we have today is for those that have not done it, on how probably we can have more time so that we bring them on board and ensure, like what I keep saying, we ensure that we are not starved of the needed raw material and the intermediate product as manufacturers. We are not starved on the upstream where we are selling our goods, and some of them are being supplied into the markets using the small players, the small businesses, ensuring that this ecosystem is still thriving. So we have a sensitization and training forum that whereby we are trying to onboard them into the eTims as much as possible, but we have not finalized on this strategy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hakamba, we must ask you this question. This lady viewing is asking, and I know you've spoken about B2B, and we have gone back to the issue of Section 23A. I supply timber to companies that require issuance of eTims. The farmers from whom I buy the trees are reluctant to give me such receipts.
Okay, starting with herself, I hope she's onboarded on eTims. So that's where you start from. And then now we deal with, that's what we've been talking about, deal with the farmers downstream. There's a record of transaction that these farmers are giving you. The second thing is for you to bring it to our attention that we have this sector of farmers that we are having challenges onboarding them. Yeah. We've been talking about what are we talking about? The reverse invoicing solution. She could be probably where she's sitting, she could be a good target for doing the reverse invoicing solution. What this really means is that you are being supported by entities that probably are incapacitated in one way or the other to issue the electronic tax invoices, but you need that support for you to also support the next person in the supply chain. So we come forward and we establish what model we can adopt with you so that you will be standing in representing the person downstream. But the person downstream also needs to be sensitized to know that this information is required, and because you cannot do it and you are required by law to do it, then this entity will be providing this information on your behalf.
Hakamba, I'm glad you've prompted this discussion. I was going to ask you, but it's come from you. So as we speak, do we have reverse invoicing in place in this country, or when are we looking to roll it out?
So again, coming to that, the reverse invoicing solution, I talked about the coffee sector. It's really a solution I think we are thinking about on one-on-one basis. Basically, there are two solutions that we have in mind. There are some who have already started adopting this solution, whereby once we identify you, be it you being a broker or being you being an aggregator, then we'll be requiring you to collect information from the entities that are supplying to you in a certain format, and submit it to the Revenue Authority. Now that's a work in progress. That's why I was saying that there are some sectors who've actually started their work towards this. But what it takes is for us to have this sitting, understanding what kind of structures do you have? Do you have an automated system? If you don't have an automated system, then what kind of data, in what format are you giving us this data? So that's a work in progress that is going on. The second model of the same, we are calling it the buyer-initiated invoice. This one is a bit different because it's subject to development from KRA, not yet. We've done the requirements, but how it's looking is that if I'm supplying to some entity, let's say a retail outlet, and I wouldn't like to be generating the invoices, I will actually come into the system and I say, this retail outlet or this manufacturing entity will be doing the invoices on my behalf. So anytime I make a supply, they actually have a login credentials to log in, submit the invoices. I see the record of the invoices. I'm just not the one doing it, and I've appointed them. So that one is still, it's a work in progress. Again, it's in development. It's not yet out yet. It's in design.
At this point should have come a lot earlier in this show, but nonetheless, Robert, would reverse invoicing be a game changer?
Absolutely. I think, especially like what Hakamba is saying, you're dealing, instead of dealing with, say, 1,000 farmers, you're dealing with one supplier or one aggregator, one buyer. And Revenue Authority knows that this buyer is procuring from so many suppliers. So the only thing that I need to do is issue invoices. And this is probably a big corporation or a big enterprise that has complied with eTims itself and knows how to use it. Probably when they call Hakamba, the Hakamba will be more ready to listen to them and so on and so forth. So for me, absolutely it would be a game changer. And by the way, Julian, this reverse invoicing, in the UK they call it self-invoicing, and in the EU generally it's called self-invoicing. It's something that has been done, and I really look forward to it being rolled out so that, to the people who like the lady who asked that question, so that we can get as many people as possible into the eTims bracket, and we avoid the issue that Job was talking about, locking out people, because it means that I can continue supplying Farmer's Choice, I can continue supplying all these big aggregators, avocado farmers and so on and so forth, and everybody is paying their taxes, and KRA has got visibility of those transactions. So it definitely would be a game changer.
Friends, unfortunately we have 7 minutes to go. Let me take your closing thoughts. Job.
Thanks, Julian. I have to say that the collaboration between the government and the private sector is going to be to unlock the challenges that we're facing today. The last solution that we're hearing like now, the reverse invoicing solution, it's something that even manufacturers we have proposed that should work. If we're open to those innovative ideas, and not necessarily that the one who is supplying is the one to generate the invoice, I think we'll be able to overcome the challenge much earlier than it is anticipated, because it is us as manufacturers who will be generating these invoices on behalf of those that are supplying to us. Secondly, my ask is that because we have these teething problems and we don't want to lock anybody out of business, we don't want to destabilize anybody, building a brand is such a big thing. Building a customer base also is such a big thing. Let's try to protect these by allowing the time that we are talking about, and collaboratively between the government and the private sector will continue onboarding more and more.
Robert, your closing thoughts.
Yeah, Julian, as in principle, the eTims is really a revolutionary idea, and I agree with it. My ask for Revenue Authority is, given the challenges that we experienced in February, filing the VAT February return, I'd be happier if Revenue Authority allowed taxpayers to have a look at the transaction. So tomorrow, I just go and look at my suppliers and say, have you transmitted correctly? If there's an issue, then we start addressing it way before the deadline. And hopefully that way, we can iron out the kinks, as you correctly say. But my other hope is that just like any system which faces a lot of resistance, I encourage Revenue Authority to go out there, continue. It's not an easy thing. Let them continue sensitizing the users. Let as many people, let the 7 million people come on board. That way, we can then now have the tax rate coming down to 25% to 22% for POIE.
As per MTRS.
As per
the
MTRS.
medium-term revenue strategy for that matter. Hakamba, your closing thoughts.
Okay,
and
thank
you have 4 minutes more time than the gentleman.
More time. So I don't think I'll use all the time, but basically we appreciate all the feedback. I mean, all the feedback is important to us because as we've seen, it's not an easy implementation. But then again, it's going to take all of us to work together. We keep talking about everyone paying their fair share of taxes. This is it. For those who've been paying their taxes, by the way, they find it easier to comply than when you know that you've actually been on the dark side of things. So we'd like to encourage all taxpayers to actually comply because it's for the good of all of us. When you're looking at such an implementation, you know, sometimes you can be limited. We are looking at what the Revenue Authority stands to gain from this. But then what we've seen over time and with the engagements that we've had with stakeholders, it's actually a big game changer when even it comes to formulation of government policy for some of these sectors, because as you see you will see how the transactions are moving, you're able to identify where the challenges are and be able to formulate policies that are actually good for spurring such sectors forward and for the betterment of the players in that sector. So just generally to urge all taxpayers, those who have not onboarded, we are still in this journey. We've not given timelines that by when you should onboard because you are already late. The date was 1st January 2024. And so we urge you to onboard. For those who need to come forward for a collaborative approach, we are still available and we have solutions for everyone so that everyone can comply. Thank you.
Many thanks, Hakamba Wangwe, Chief Manager eTims from KRA. Thank you so much for your time. Job Wanjohi, Head of Policy and Advocacy from Association Manufacturers. Thank you so much. Robert, thank you so much from ISPAC where he chairs. There's a final question here. Let me just take it very fast. Kangethe Wakanya is asking, when you talk about exemptions for similar payments, that's exactly what we're talking about. We need to see the regulations, which we're hoping we'll see sometime this week, to help us understand when the law talks about similar payments being worthy of exemption from eTims, what exactly does it mean? So we wait for the regulations. We don't have an answer yet. Treasury, I believe, has the answer for now. James Smart is up next with the news, so stay tuned.